Hi Daria. I've been trying to put this together for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 days now. I figured I'd just quit procrastinating and put something together, and if it's not great, so be it. I'm going to try my best to kind of show you what I do now and what I started out with and see if that helps. And then I'll just wait for you to ask more questions and see if that turns into something more like what you want. But I'm going to just start off with what I can and keep going from there. So I don't know how to get my whole shop in the picture, but basically my current shop is a lot of stuff. And honestly, only probably about 20% of this is necessary for what I do, but I have a lot of interests, so I kind of tend to collect tools for all sorts of stuff. But basically, it sounded like you wanted to start out as simple as possible, so you're going to have to buy wood, and most wood comes in whatever dimensions. Here I can buy wood by the thickness, they call it quarter, and the length. So a piece of wood like this, this is that red Paduke. I can buy a piece of wood like this for like $16 a foot. And yeah, so I start off with these fairly large chunks. When I first started, I was getting these small ones from a cabinet shop. So when they finished making their cabinets, they would have all these little pieces and parts. You can see I have a bucket full here. And I would go and dig those out of their dumpster or ask them if I could take them, and they would give them to me. And so I still have quite a few of those left. I also have a friend who makes cutting boards, so I would get all of his scraps left over from cutting off the end of cutting boards. And so that's how I got my wood. And then to break down my wood, my first shop was in a storage unit and I only had one outlet. So I bought battery powered tools, and I'll be honest, I love having a table saw and a chop saw, but this saw right here was what I used for the first probably 6 or 8 months to cut down all my wood. So it's just a regular battery powered circular saw. And I don't know if that helps, but that's how I break down anything that was too long. I'd cut it shorter. As far as tools go, I really rely on the power sanders all the time. I don't think I could live without a small sander like this. I do not like this combination sander with the disc on the end and the belt. I'd rather have two separate machines. And the reason is, I can't tell you the number of times that I have sanded my hand on this trying to move it while it's running, because naturally I want to grab something to move it, and I end up grabbing here and getting my hand. In fact, I just got this side of my pinky less than a week ago. So two separate machines, but a little mini belt sander and a disc sander. I would actually like a bigger disc sander than this, but this works really well for cleaning up sides and cutting down on the amount of hand sanding you have to do. When I first started, I would just take sandpaper and glue it to a board, and that's still my preferred method for getting things really flat and smooth, is I will actually take my parts and I'll just lay them on here. I got one that's broken. It's a pair of feet on a little heart. I'll just take them and I'll go around until I get it the way I want it, and then I'll go with the grain as the last little bit. But anyway, this is still the method that I use for cleaning up parts, is I glue, and this piece of wood is just double-sided sticky tape down to my workbench. But that's the way I like to sand, is with flat paper on a board. Going back over here. So once you got your wood broken down from big to small, the other tools that I can't live without are, I currently use the bandsaw and the drill press all the time. The truth is, when I started, I didn't have a bandsaw, so I used, I think they call this a jigsaw. I used this little jigsaw for cutting curves and things that I needed to have like holes in the center of that were bigger than I had a drill bit for. So that, and then before I had the drill press, I bought this little thing. It's a little block with some collets in it. I think they might be made out of, or they're lined with, I want to say brass, or not brass, but they're lined with something that doesn't drill very easily. I can't think of the name of it. I think it's bronze bushings. Anyway, the way this works is you just put your drill in whatever the right size hole is, and it forces your drill to stand pretty much straight up and down. So I would use that for drilling like the ends of my blocks and stuff where I had to have stuff line up. So that's how I started. Cheap little drill block. Let's see. This is a tool that I use every single day. It's a scroll saw, and this was a used one I got on Craigslist. I think I paid $150 or maybe $200 for it total. But this has been a machine. It's nice and quiet. And I use it for doing all of my, pretty much cutting all my dowels and metal parts and everything, and for making complex shapes. Really nice tool. I'd say that that would be the first one that I would buy. If I had to buy a big tool that was expensive, I would buy a scroll saw. It just makes life so much easier. And then, let's see, hand tools I can't live without. All of my wire bending and stuff I do almost 90% with this. It turns out that each one of these rings is set to a good size. I think this is 1/16, this is 1/8, and it goes up from there. Standard measurements for here in the United States. And I use this all the time. I use it for bending wires round. Let me see if I can find one that I've already done. Do I have one in my drawer? I have a messy drawer down here, sorry. But when I need to make a ring on the end of a piece of wire, I end up using this tool right here because it gives me perfect rings the right size. And then the other favorite that I have is this one. It's got a round side on one side and kind of a cup side on the other. And this makes it really easy to turn wire in a circle. This is the one I started with. It's still a good tool, but I tend to not use it nearly as much as I do this one. And when I first started out, I bought a set from, I think this was Walmart or some cheap store. I bought a set of 3 of these, and all of them are bent now, so they're garbage. So I try to look for higher quality stuff. I don't know if this brand is available or if it's the best brand or anything, but I've been using this Beadsmith brand, and it seems to work pretty good. They do bend if you use them with the wrong gauge wire, but that's my fault. And then I have a pair of cutters that cut perfectly flush, and a pair of heavy cutters that allow me to cut through metal that normally you can't cut with the smaller ones. And then I have 2 pair of needle nose pliers, one of them with the grooves, and that's for bending wire over so it doesn't spin on me. And then I have a pair with a smooth tip that I use for adjusting when I don't want to leave marks. So those are basically the hand tools I couldn't live without. I also tend to use the little scissors for cutting leather, and a pair of little files for smoothing out stuff that's inside of corners. And then I started out with a little hand drill for drilling small holes. I have a square compass and pencil that I use all the time. Can't live without those tools. And then I started out with this teeny tiny tape measure for all my stuff, and a little metal ruler. It has a bunch of different sizes on it. And then I would invest in a little caliper. I've already broken the back side of this, but I use this all the time to measure the size of holes and the diameter of dowels and stuff to make sure they're going to fit. And then I bought a little hammer that I use for hammering in like brass rods and stuff like that. I have a whole bunch of drills this size that I use with a drill that I'll show you. Where is it? Over here. I bought this inexpensive drill, and I got the kind that doesn't have the collet, and I just ended up buying all my drill bits with this kind of end on them, and that made it super easy to quick change. And then, sorry, I'm going through this as fast as I can. I use this for holding pieces that I have to cut that are too small to hold in my fingers. I don't like cutting and sawing with stuff that's moving around. And then I have a little razor saw that I used for cutting dowels and everything before I got that tool. And you asked about glue. This is Titebond wood glue. I think it's type 2. It's the one that dries clear mostly. But 99% of the time I use just a CA glue, acrylic glue, I think they call it. I'm not taping over the label to hide it. What I did was I am constantly grabbing the wrong bottle and pouring the thin stuff when I mean to pour the medium stuff, so I had to give it a little texture. And then there's a bottle of this spray that basically makes this stuff set up almost instantly. So if it's a little too runny and I'm having trouble getting something to set up, I'll give this little spray. So that's the glue that I use. There's little tips that you can buy that make this glue so you can apply it inside of really tiny holes. And then when I first started my carving, I used a Dremel tool. I don't have that Dremel tool anymore, so now I have this, I don't even know how to pronounce that, as Wetcher or Wheatier. It's a rotary tool that has a flex shaft on it. Like I said, I started with just a regular Dremel tool. I think it was $25 or something like that. This is like a $200 tool, but has a little foot pedal on the floor that you can use to operate it, and an assortment of bits that I use to carve and cut and grind with so that I could make various character shapes. And then I use a lot of these little sanding discs. They're kind of soft discs with a grit on them. I use that for getting rid of the fuzz and stuff when I'm using power tools to cut things up. And I think those are the critical things that I use all the time. Everything else has to do with like trying to do more production. So now I tend to make a lot of parts ahead of time so that I can just make a lot at the same time. I think that's about it. A lot of these tools you don't need for, I do like this sander. It's a sander that has a belt on it, and it also has an attachment so you can do spindles, so you can carve out or sand out holes. This is a planer that I use for making wood an exact thickness and making sure that it's perfectly flat. That has more to do with the CNC machine that I have than it does regular woodworking. I do like having a router with a table. It allows me to round off corners and stuff really quick. Chop saw is really nice. Not necessary. If you have a table saw, you can do pretty much everything you do with the chop saw with the table saw for what I do. And then of course, my biggest upgrade was I bought a CNC machine with a 4th axis. So I actually have a rotary attachment that will spin things around at the same time as going left and right and up and down. So this machine is what I do most of my gears and everything with now. I was doing all the gears on that scroll saw when I first started, but it takes so long with that that I use this now almost exclusively. In fact, I'm in the middle of working on a set of gears right now. So this is kind of my little CNC workstation and the computer, and then I pack up all my orders and ship them out over there. And then everything over here is just storage, kind of blocked and hidden. I think that pretty much covers it. I'm in the middle of converting half of my shop to a classroom. So I don't know if I can get it in the picture, but I'm gonna have these 2 tables and a bunch of chairs so I can teach classes in here. So half of my workshop now is dedicated to that. And then Becky and I just finished making this little area where we can have snacks, and of course I have to have games to play after work. And then over here are some projects that I'm working on later. And this is the whole robot series, all the originals that I created. I still have 4 more to go, but I think that's pretty much it. I guess basically if you have questions or you want to know anything else, just let me know. I'm trying to put this together to kind of get an idea of what you want, but that's kind of where I am and what I do, and hopefully that helps.